has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
This is the Next Reel's Film Board, everybody. Each month, a gang of thugs gathers to take on one film currently in theaters and spoil that film rotten. This month, it's all aboard the Star Killer with Rey, Finn, Kylo, and the gang in J.J. Abrams' entree into our grand mythology with Star Wars, The Force Awakens. I'm Pete Wright, and making up the gang, Steve Sarmento.
Red 5, standing by.
Justin J.J. Jaeger.
Back at it again.
Tommy Handsome, welcome.
It's a trap.
And Andy Nelson.
Watch it, Devulia.
Before we get into the film, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com/filmboard. Subscribe to the show for free in iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And be sure to join us on The Next Reel's Instagram, hashtag PonyPrize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge with our favorite games master, Stephen Smart. New contest going on weekly. And this is it. We are doing our drawing for our annual Pony Prize giveaway very soon. So this is the last chance you can get in on that sweet, sweet pony action. First, we do have some follow-up. We have some Film Board follow-up, right, Andy?
Yes, we do, Pete. Yes, over on Letterboxd, on our Letterboxd account, Rakesh Raja left us a note. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I was curious if your guys' opinion on Gravity has changed since its release. I know recently it's gotten a lot of backlash due to its simple story.
I think it actually has some great crossover to the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about today with the new Star Wars movie. And I think it hasn't lost any of its luster for me because I think Gravity in particular is such a special, small story. I wasn't here for that Film Board episode, but I did watch it and review it to go with, my work here with the Film Board, and I think it's still great. It's really still high on my list.
I was kind of curious where it fell on our chart and why it's there in that position. And so I looked at it, and it has been a number one on our chart for over 2 years, right? Wow. That was 2013.
Number
November.
1. Huh.
And since then, we've reviewed 7 films that have entered our top 10 that have not dethroned it. So our top 10 is pretty heavy with 2014, 2015 films. And I thought, okay, maybe it's being shielded by Edge of Tomorrow, which is right up there at number 2, and things start to get close to Edge of Tomorrow and get knocked down. Possibly. But really, I think, as JJ said, this film has an enduring value that just, it's not just the spectacle. I think if you go back and listen to our reviews, there was a lot of the experience of seeing that in the theater. Those of us that saw it in Atmos and just that immersive experience that we all came away with from that film. But upon reviewing that film, seeing it again on, DVD, for me, it still holds up. It's still a great film. It's a simple story, just told very, very well.
It's so cinematic, again, something that we're going to be getting into later in this podcast, to take a small story and make it so visual and so heart-pounding and scary and hopeful and all that stuff at times. I think that's exactly what movies are made for. So, and it saved us from having to talk about The Counselor, if you remember it. So that's a win-win.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it may be a simple story, but there's something about a simple story that can really get to you emotionally. And I think it has that emotional power in a very exciting way. So I think it definitely fits up there still.
I did watch it again at home, and it didn't have that same kind of impact, but I still found it a terrific experience, and it dramatically changed my connection to it because there wasn't the sensory overload of it, and I found myself, I think, more connected with the character experience and than I was even the first time I saw it because of the kind of lack of flash and dazzle, and so I thought it was good. I think it's in a good place. Anyhow, so that's where we are, and I hope that is good. Thank you so much, Rakesh Raja, for writing in. That is a great question, and thank you so much for listening and participating. We appreciate it. So here we go. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. So round the horn, a two-parter. There are 2 questions here. How'd you like this film as to whether or not it met your expectations as a reboot or kind of launch of this next round of the franchise? Right, that's number 1. And number 2, how well did it live up to your hopes as a fan?
I'm going to answer the second part first and the first part second.
Nice.
You're already cheating.
Dark side.
Crazy.
Well,
Already
because
dark side.
So I did manage to. You'll have no idea. You won't believe me. I have been able to avoid pretty much everything other than the first teaser.
I don't believe you.
I'm a cable cutter, so I rely on Hulu and Netflix for TV shows and movies. So no network TV, none of that. I actually have paid the extra for Hulu commercial free, so we're pretty much an advertisement free household. When going to the theater, if trailers were coming up and it was Star Wars, I was shielding my eyes, fingers jammed in my ears.
That's got to be just a little embarrassing, like with your family.
I don't care. They knew what I was doing. So as a fan going in, I really feel like I truly experienced this just like I experienced Star Wars A New Hope 40 years ago, as just going in like, here's a movie about some outer space stuff. And so as a fan, it lived up to my hopes. It was like I was a kid again. I had a tremendous time with this. As I was walking out of the theater, I heard somebody getting up from their seat say, look at the screen and say, yep, that was a Star Wars movie. And that just, I think, encapsulated everything I felt about that film. And I want to spend a little bit more time. We can maybe get into it, that first part about the reboot and sort of how it's the third cycle of the stories. And to me, it did what it needed to do. It balanced how we have a hero's journey story while maintaining the connection to that prior existing universe. There is a gap, between cycles, and so there's gaps of information, which I'm fine with it. It's like starting anew, but being familiar. And I had a great time with it.
I'm so happy this movie got the J.J. Abrams treatment. I'm going to go the same route that Steve went, in that my expectations as a fan were met by that, in that it really feels like a great reboot. One of the things that I kind of am hoping to talk about is the choice of whether it's a sequel, whether it's part 7, or whether it's a new restart for the franchise, because that's what it feels like. And that's what J.J. Abrams did so well in the Star Trek universe, and paid the correct homage and made it feel all right. But it's not perfect. There are some things that are missing. It may be okay that it's missing those things. It may be speaking to the right place for us now. It met my expectations, and as a fan, I was perma-smile throughout the whole thing, and wistful and happy and excited and giddy throughout the movie. And as a reboot, I think it's a choice, and I'm happy with the choice. But it did lose some things in going that route too. So it's not the same necessarily magical feeling that I had when I saw A New Hope, which I didn't see in the theater, but that's something that we can talk about too. It's a choice, and I'm really happy with the choice, and I think it's a great movie, and it's something it's going to be great to talk about today too.
Oh, what? I didn't see it. I saw Jurassic World again, but you guys have a great podcast. No, I'm a little bit of a different way to answer, like Steve did, Dark Side, to answer the second first. I'm in a little bit different of a situation, because while I loved Star Wars growing up, at some point my heart died, and I lost some of the excitement for this. I don't know if it's because it's spaceships and that kind of stuff and fantasy creatures, and I lost my taste for that. I'm not sure, but I'm trying. I wasn't a Grinch about it, but I wasn't as, I guess my expectations weren't too high, which probably helps. And along with that, I felt like it relied so much on nostalgia, which I could then feed off of people in the theater. Whenever an old character would show up, everyone burst into applause. It was adorable. And so I could feed off of their excitement for that. Past that, I was really distracted by how similar the story was to Star Wars we've seen before. And this goes to the idea of a restart or a reboot versus a sequel. A droid with a hidden message, a young person strong with the Force that lives on a sand planet, the Death Star 3000. It was so much of that. I felt myself being really distracted by that and wondering why they didn't want to really try to tell a real different story.
I can see Tommy's point. I definitely can. And I think from what I've seen of reviews, that seems to be kind of the biggest complaint, is that it does feel so much like a reboot of, or rehashing almost of, A New Hope, the way that the story is laid out. But that being said, that didn't bother me at all. I mean, I felt, as a fan, I really felt like they just They told a great story with great characters. I had just so much fun from beginning to end watching it. I was just wholly invested in all the characters and the world building they did here. I just really enjoyed. I got into it all the way through, and all of those things that I knew people could probably complain about and would and have, it just didn't bother me at all. It's not stuff that, for me, I felt created any problem. And I actually really liked that it kind of took that story and almost created a new mythology for years later, as far as these characters are concerned, to kind of follow in their footsteps. And I really liked that. So I'm all for it. I think it's a great step forward in this franchise, and I can't wait to see where they go from here.
I think if I'm putting on the sort of critical face, that's definitely where I go. That it's the kind of rehashing, rebooting the story. You know, we've seen it a very, very similar story, not just once but twice before in both Jedi and A New Hope. Very similar, sort of nick of time, stolen plans, drop the shields, do the trench run, save the day. But at the same time, this movie, I mean, who cried? Come on.
Oh,
multiple times.
Multiple times. I was a mess in this film. And from the first start, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, to just about the end of the crawl when I recuperated and was able to see again, and then multiple times throughout many of the big cues, I was a mess. It had me emotionally from the very beginning and did not let go. And so it is very difficult to be at all sort of critical, and so I that's kind of the gravity lag that I'm a little bit worried about, that I may be just sort of giving it too much of a pass. But I found myself just adoring it and actively frustrated with people who were critical of it. So I hope that I'm able to.
I know,
let
that's
that
why
go.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Good thing we have Tommy.
Hooray!
We should say this is one of those movies that is really it's just not fun to see if you know the spoiler. And this is what we do here as we spoil movies. So seriously, we haven't spoiled it yet, but we're going to spoil the movie from here on out. We're going to talk about points that you should not listen to if you haven't seen it, and you will enjoy it more if you take my word for it. Pass this podcast, go listen to it again after you've seen the movie, and come back to it. But you have been warned. From here on out, spoilers ensue. Should we start with the reboot angle before we dig into some of the specifics? Because I think that's an important question to kind of put out of the way.
That part is kind of disappointing to me. I hear what you're saying, Pete, about it's kind of difficult to be critical of it when you're so happy that it was treated so appropriately. But I'm going to be way into hyperbole when I say it's the same movie as A New Hope. It's literally the same movie. And if that bothers you at all, if that's the pee under your mattresses, you're gonna really not like this. And if I ruminate on those pieces of this movie, it feels cheap. But J.J. Abrams does that well. And, I mentioned the Star Trek thing because I love what he did there. The reason in my opening remarks I said it's not perfect is because as a fan, I was hoping for something new. It's not that. It's just more, bigger, and better than what you had before if you like J.J. Abrams' style of movie. It's more, and when I say what you had before, I'm talking about Episode 4. The thing about it is, it's still good. It's still great. And we've been treated so poorly with episodes 1, 2, 3 that this is such a grand reawakening of the Star Wars franchise that I think people are going to be happy with it. I was, but if I think about that reboot angle, I wasn't happy about that. I want something new, and I think that hopefully we're going that direction in 7, 8, 9.
I'm with you on your point that it's the same movie. I mean, I may not go quite that far, but it's a very similar movie to A New Hope, and yet I loved A New Hope so much. Like, I thought it was structurally, I adored it, and I still adore it. And seeing that story again in the hands of a different filmmaker, I adore it equally. Like, it's great to see it. It's great to sit next to my kids and watch it that way.
Disney knows you love it.
They do. That's unfortunate. But you know what's even more interesting? As much as I was not a huge fan of the prequels, I do love that they were different. They attempted to tell a different part of the timeline of the story, and I really liked that.
Right.
And that I didn't think I was as aware of that as I was until I walked out of The Force Awakens.
See, it's tough for me because I only love the prequels. Like, what if I was so contrarian? I'm the only person on earth that's like, the real movies, 1, 2, and 3. No, I mean, in part, could it be, I mean, apart from being a reboot or restart, is it also potentially a, let's just wash away 1, 2, and 3 and get things so back on track that we need to remind people, this is a Star Wars movie. This is what it's like. For me, they went too far in the idea of retelling the same story with way too many same things, but it could also be that. Play it a little bit of a safe bet to say, it's in the right hands now, we know what we're doing, and we're going to get it back on track.
I don't see this as the same. Yes, there's common story elements, but that's just like saying, well, in speaking to the enjoyment of it, is saying like, well, I don't need to see Fast and the Furious 5, 6, 7 because it's just guys in cars stealing stuff and on the road. Or I don't need to see another Die Hard movie because it's just Bruce Willis saving things. It has those common elements because that's what it does. It's giving us, that's what a good film does. It gives us what we expect, but it gives us that in a new way. And to me, it did that. I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm watching the opening crawl, and then it's Field of Stars, and then pan down to planet. And I'm like, okay, a ship's going to come across. But in this film, it does it differently than the ones we've seen before. We've got this, the planet gets completely obscured. We have a desert planet, but we don't start with 2 droids. We start with a droid. But I'm getting those familiar things, but they're twisted just enough in the storytelling to make them new that I enjoy it because it's bringing it back to, as Tommy said, it is almost washing all of that away because we're back at a place where it's just good versus evil, the rebels versus the forces of evil. We don't have the Senate and politics and all this other stuff going on. To me, that muddled up those episodes 1, 2, and 3. This is just at its core good, the forces of light fighting the forces of darkness, and that's what I loved in these. And it gave me what I wanted, but it kept it fresh. And I can't remember at what point in the story I just thought, oh my gosh, we must be at least an hour and a half into this. I want 3 more hours of this. Because I was just having such a great time. I said, please don't let this end now. Please don't let this end now. I could stay here all day. I love these characters. I love these worlds that we're going to. I just want more of this. I will take more. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Except I love your enjoyment of it, and I apologize, and I'm going to keep my annoyingness to a minimum. I'm going to try to. But it's not like in Fast and the Furious 7. I don't think this is going to work, but I'm going to try this. It's not like in Fast and the Furious 7, we met a new young Vin Diesel and figured out his entire backstory that led him to be exactly who Vin Diesel is. Like, it's really close. Sand Planet. Force is strong with her. She gets the calling. She learns the Force in 5 minutes, but that's a side note. But I mean, it's really close.
New Death Star.
New Death Star.
It's not a Death Star. It's a Star Killer. It's very different.
It's like Vanilla Ice and Queen, right?
Yeah, it's not dun 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 dun. It's dun 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 dun. Right. That's perfect for me.
So, Tommy, to your point, we're getting the hero's journey again. Yes, they could have maybe perhaps said could have been a young girl born in a rainforest planet, all that, So, am I going to let those things get to me? No, I'm going to set that aside because to me, it's again bringing it back to the familiar of that. And so I saw that there were a lot of parallels, but I said this is the hero's journey. This is the story I want to see of a new character. As this third cycle begins of going on a new adventure with somebody, because I know that opens up so many story possibilities for me, but with the common touchstones that keep me rooted into where we are in the story and where things are going.
Well, and that makes tons of sense. And I love a hero's journey, I guess maybe for me, and I won't keep harping on it, but the hero's journey didn't need to be a young person on a sand planet with a missing family who finds a droid with a hidden message and meets the resistance in the Republic or whatever it is as a result. I like touchstones. I like a hero's journey. I think there's different ways to do it. This one was just really close.
I think we can go to that scene that you're talking about, Tom, when you talk about Rey discovering the Force, because I was talking actually to my nephew about this today, about that scene where they have the mind battle, right? And to someone who isn't in love with the Star Wars mythology, or who doesn't have the affection of what's going on in that scene and doesn't really think about the Force, all the stuff that you can't see, that scene is ridiculous. But if you do connect with the mythology, if you really care about the Force, which is just ridiculous, but I do, so I can put myself in that. I loved that scene because I was getting in there with her. I mean, I loved that she connected with the Force quicker than Luke, who was a pansy in 4 and 5, right? She's more powerful, and the dynamic between Kylo Ren and Rey is interesting in the way that it flips that coin from what we saw in 4, 5, 6, and the dynamic of the Force awakening in those characters. I loved that, but I can totally understand for someone who isn't as affectionate about this mythology why that would suck. And that, I think, may be indicative of what we're talking about for this greater part of this reboot.
Well, and that I remembered my point, which ties in with that. I think JJ did a great job with the first Star Trek reboot, and then the second one I felt was way too much of a retread. Going back to the story of Khan. And that story had been done really well the first time, and there was no reason to go back and do it a second time.
Agreed.
And that would be a concern of mine, is that JJ can't, that's something that he has kind of all of a sudden kind of become, is this guy who can do really good retreads of things. And not that I want to say that this is nothing but just a retread of episode 4, despite this discussion. But I think that from here moving forward in this new series that they're doing, I think it's a great decision on their part and JJ's part to not have him helming all 3 of these, but to have different directors bringing each one to the table, which I think is going to help kind of keep that from happening. And I mean, honestly, I really, as much as people might say this is a retread of episode 4, I really don't expect the next 2 to be retreads of episodes 5 and 6. I think that would just be way too much. This is a great
2 Death Stars.
This is a great way to restart this story. And with kind of that classic hero's journey, with a lot of touches from the Star Wars we all know and love, that really gets it onto the right track, I think. And then I think from here forward, I think they're going to just keep moving in new directions that will constantly surprise us and make us just fall more and more in love with this series.
I believe that
too.
It's
interesting. I walked out of there thinking about the other times this has happened, right? And both of those times that came to mind immediately were Star Trek. And the first one is obviously you've already mentioned. It's the reboot of Star Trek, doing it in an alternate timeline, right? Just latching on to the space-time continuum in order to give us a clean slate. And I think most of us bought it, right? That worked pretty well. And now we have the relief of having a new frontier before us. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Khan story was disappointing, is because you had such a great opportunity to do whatever you wanted to do, and you did Khan, so I was sort of done with that. The other time that they did this in the Trek universe that I felt was really terrible was Star Trek Generations, where they tried to do the cast handoff thing, and that I feel like they did really well in this film, right? That we actually have the melding of these 2 casts, and at no point did it feel like a gimmick to me. It felt very legitimately like we're looking at the next generation under the custodianship of the past generation, and it felt okay.
They actually made it a generational story where we actually got the son of Han Solo and General Leia. I think that was one of the strengths, is that they actually were able to tie these casts together in a great way like that.
It's so cool how you just immediately say General Leia. That's so beyond me. I love that. I'm so impressed. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think that the interesting aspect of that handoff is we not only that we have that generational piece to it, but it's apparent that the handoff occurs in a world where that prior generation has almost mythic status, because the name Luke Skywalker gets thrown around, and somebody's like, "I thought he was a myth." Mm-hmm. This is this legendary person that people have spoken of in such a way, but he's not present. He's not there day to day involved. There's not this relationship. So it's the way those come together. It's not just like, oh, okay, here's these people that we're training to take over, sort of like in the Star Trek Generations, but it's two different worlds that have now started to overlap, and the story just bridges from one to the other, and we see where they cross. And to me, that worked really, really well. And I will
really
say
like that too.
I'd say I'm going to attribute that to the writing, and again, I'm going to take some of this off J.J. Abrams, because he was not a writer on either of those Trek films. And I think I think it's a bold choice and a smart choice they made here with this, to have with Force Awakens. We've got specific writers. We had Lawrence Kasdan, who was back, writing this. But moving forward, we've got somebody else. We've got Rian Johnson, and these stories have been signed, years ago. So it's not just, oh, we're going to do this, let's see what happens next. Where I think with Star Trek, it's like, let's throw this out there, see if it sticks. Okay, I don't know that sequel was planned, Into Darkness. I don't know enough of the development behind it, but here we know that there is definitely a long-term scaled plan for these stories, because we have not only episode 7, 8, 9, but these little one-offs that are going to tie in and feed into that. So I have this sort of assurance that I know that there's already a thoughtful intent to the design of this storytelling arc that I can count on. So I'm not concerned or worried about that, of getting another story that's just, oh, it's Empire Strikes Back again. For our next episode, we're in a distinctly different place, but again with some familiar tropes that we're going to see. So I'm excited about this handoff and how it occurred in the rich world that they've really developed here.
It all sounds like our faith in what's happening here is really an answer to Tommy's earlier question of what they've done here in the retelling of the story is trying to wash our taste buds of the people that weren't happy with 1, 2, 3. And I think that's right. I mean, we really believe that they're going to take it in a different direction. And I think so too. But I understand how people might not get the right impression based on the story here.
Much of the custodianship of this film is dependent on how you feel about our heroic trio, and I think all of us are fairly tight with the trio we grew up with: Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher as Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia. The new team that we have here, we've got Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac on the light side. How do they hit you, these young actors, in their roles as the trio in The Force Awakens?
I really like them. I got nervous, and it's to his credit because he starts very scared. Sorry, I should start with the lead. John Boyega as Finn, FN, who becomes Finn. He became very charming, very funny, very relatable as the film went on. For the first probably, I have no idea how much, I got a little bit worried that he seemed a little stiff, a little bit not very much fun, but he was great. I thought Oscar Isaac, I love no matter what he does, and so I thought he was fantastic, even when he was a little bro-ish at times. And
who talks first? You talk first? Do I talk first?
You talk first. That was the first, when that happened, that's when the film started to, and I know that's not too much into it, that's when the film started to come alive to me of like, oh, J.J. Abrams is directing this.
Yep.
That was like a Joss Whedon touch of like, take a trope and turn it on its head and make it relatable and like with real people. And I liked, who played Rey?
Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley. I thought she was great. I liked all of them. I'll cut it short. I thought by the end of the film, I liked all of them, and I wanted to see them do more things in this universe. So that's probably the best compliment I can give.
I want to zero in a little bit on Finn, if only because as much as I'd like to talk about Oscar Isaac, he in this film, I think he's kind of a utility player, and we didn't get a whole lot of depth. But Finn, what an interesting thing to show us. To use him as a tool to define what betrayal means in this era of the First Order. I thought that was really interesting, that we actually get to see a labor dispute, essentially, in this film. And I loved what it allowed us to see in terms of his character, because so much of this, even when we're introduced to Kylo Ren, played by Adam Driver, and his relationship with his father. This is a father-son story that's about a son that got whipped up into a cult, and so this cult, there are constraints around this cult, and so he can't get away from it, but in fact, Finn in his role could, and I thought that ended up being a really interesting nuance on the sort of A New Hope storyline that we have already kind of talked about. And anybody else see that? Am I alone?
I love that you caught that. I mean, I hadn't really thought about that in depth, about the contrast between what's going on between Kylo Ren and Finn there. But I love both of them. I thought Adam Driver did a great job. I've never seen him before that I remember on screen that's as Kylo Ren. And Finn was interesting. I got nervous a couple times when he was sort of kind of put in the corner to give us reaction shots. About he screamed in happiness really well, but then I remembered that that's a big part of the early Star Wars movies is their effusive joy about being able to solve these impossible situations, and again it felt like a J.J. Abrams homage. I think that's an interesting part of the story that you bring up, Pete, that I hadn't considered in terms of complication in looking at what's going on with the First Order.
In A New Hope, we're introduced to Darth Vader as sort of he's not really a guy in power, and the political machine doesn't really consider him much of a threat, right? I mean, they sort of go, Mos Tarkin kind of goes and does his thing on the Death Star, and Darth Vader, everybody's kind of scared of him because of the dark helmet thing, but generally they didn't give him, we aren't shown as Darth Vader being much in terms of the political machine in A New Hope, right? And in this film, I think we have a very similar kind of divide between the military and the First Order that is led by Snoke, or I think that's his name,
Supreme Leader Snoke.
Supreme Leader Snoke. But we get much more authority in terms of the religious prominence here, and I think even symbolically, Snoke's presence on screen is 7 stories high, right? I mean, that's all we see of him is just how big a presence he as a religious leader has in this film. Symbolically, that really resonated with me in terms of the power of the cult, the power of the cause that I think we're seeing on screen. I found that fascinating.
That's why I think this story is going to go a different direction, because I think the big bad in number 9 is not going to still be the military like it was the big bad in number 6, right? With Return of the Jedi. I think the big bad in number 9, or the direction that we seem to be going, is the religion and the battle between religions here in the light side and the dark side. That's the faith that I have, that Snoke is going to become the big bad, and the what is the Death Star is really going to be a lot more essential to life as we look at the Star Wars cinematic universe.
It was interesting to see the direction the story is going, because it is definitely what I enjoyed about it was coming back to that, getting away from the political side of it. That I felt the episodes 1, 2, and 3 got tied up with the Senate and the Trade Federation. I mean, all that stuff that I was like, I don't want any of that. And it comes. So what we get is, in terms of the transition, because as JJ pointed out, that in episode 4, A New Hope, which I just watched recently, there's a scene where you've got all these, military leaders around a table in the Death Star, and the one guy's like, oh, this is the ultimate power in the universe, and Darth Vader talks about the Force. He's like, oh, you don't scare us with your sorcerer's ways. And it's like, he's like this little, wizard sorcerer guy over on the side that they don't even take seriously. That dynamic is definitely shifted, where it's not the military allowing him to be there because they need, Snoke. It's he's driving this now. It's his vision, his puppetry, whatever is going on there is all brought this together. We don't know how the First Order came about specifically, and how this structure is played out. We get pieces of it, where Snoke's come from, what his ultimate game plan is, but I'm excited to see that, because we do have this big bad that is not the nameless military. In this, it's really going to be the showdown. We've got Luke and Snoke to see where things go down this light versus dark, which I found interesting so much, is those phrases getting put in there, so much of people talking about focusing on the light. I don't recall that from, New Hope, Jedi, and Empire. It was, there was, Darth Vader, there was this, but the Force. But here we had a lot of light and dark terminology that I found of interest to see being thrown around by the characters.
The father-son discussion, I think, is also an interesting one, and I feel like I'm imagining a note on the last day that Mark Hamill writes, "Dear Harrison, guess who's in episode 8? Love, Mark." It just I walked out of the theater just cracking up at that. What we get in this film is the loss of one of our beloved icons of science fiction cinema in the death of Han Solo. Did anybody see it coming?
Oh yeah,
I totally didn't.
What?
Well,
I didn't see it coming. Can you believe it? I was flabbergasted. That threw
I
my
guess
head
the question
back.
is, did you see it coming because you knew Harrison Ford's always kind of wanted out? I mean, he wanted to die in Empire Strikes Back, and my impression is that at that time Han Solo was so popular, like, oh, we can't kill him. We'll find a way to bring you back. And I don't think he was ever a fan of having to come back for Return of the Jedi. I think he wanted to have been frozen. That was it. And so I think that, a great way for JJ and team to have convinced him to come back is saying, hey, you know what? We're finally going to kill you off. And I mean, and in my head, I was always kind of convinced that, they're going to finally kill Han Solo off because that's what he's always wanted to do. So I didn't see it coming, but I guess I wasn't surprised. And I thought they did it in a really strong way.
I saw it coming. I didn't know all that background about him wanting off and whatnot. But as they're all running around the Star Killer, just as though in A New Hope everybody was running around the Death Star, I imagined that there was going to be another Obi-Wan scene. I didn't know who it was going to be with, but if you think about the story, it makes a whole lot of sense, right? So Rey is a scavenger, and her and she's also a pilot, and Chewie likes her, and she can fly the Millennium Falcon. So her guru is Han Solo. So as soon as they get to that scene and everyone stops to look, just like they did in A New Hope, of course he's the new Obi-Wan. He's the Obi-Wan for Rey that Obi-Wan was for Luke. So I as soon as they started setting that scene up, it was the scene that I expected for the 15 minutes leading up to it.
And you know what? My inner 12-year-old hates you, Andy. I didn't know any of that stuff. And knowing that Han Solo didn't want to be Han Solo, that makes me sad.
It's not that
true.
He didn't want to be it.
He wanted to end on a.
He just felt
note.
like, I've done this character. It's not strong to keep this character going. I think it was more like that. It's not like, oh, I'm done being this crazy character.
He was
my
wrong,
inner
though. He was
12-year-old
wrong.
just heard you say blah 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 sad.
If we're doing real quick Star Wars trivia, I only know one thing. Do you know where the name Star Killer came from? I assume you guys do.
It was
Yes.
originally Luke's
Original.
Star Killer, right?
Right. Yeah, I know. Shut up, Foster. That was my dog. My
Yeah,
dog.
of course.
wanted me to
Yeah,
say
no,
that.
that's
He was
right.
Bad dog. All right. No, you're I just woke him up. Good boy.
Terrible.
I do think it was appropriate the way we lost Harrison. I thought that was really artfully done, and but it does lead to a conversation about Kylo Ren and his role. I mean, here we have an interesting thing that it's this sort of dark Jedi, this not Sith, right? I mean, no
Right.
mention of Sith was brought up as far as I know, but he's a dark Jedi, and his training in this case was not complete. He's the one who had to face his father. So they took that whole Luke's journey of discovery and they gave it to the dark character. And I have to tell you, I even was so hopeful in this sequence that the father could turn the son and recover him from his sort of cultural loss. That when he took off the helmet and started crying, I was hopeful. I thought, I think he's done it. I think Han Solo has just brought Ben back, and then they didn't. Did anybody find Kylo Ren's character sort of dark side in a microwave?
What's that
in this film? He was pushed along as the big bad guy, but given too many hints that he was not ready to be the big bad guy yet. And just pushed along really, really fast.
I thought, I think Adam Driver, I was really impressed with how he handled that. I mean, they let us in, so turning that struggle on its head, like you talked about, seeing the dark side person being tempted. He actually used that word, right? Tempted by the light side in his self-reflection. And he did such a great job of it in this simple microwave, as you describe it, Pete, where you look at in 1, 2, 3, Hayden Christensen went through the same thing in deadpan for 3 movies and never really
never really got there.
Right? I mean, for me personally, I was just not happy with Hayden Christensen ever in 1, 2, and 3. And Adam Driver did it in maybe 40 minutes of screen time in this episode. I was really happy with that. And I thought that was really effective. I didn't have the same faith that you did, Pete, that he was going to bring him back. But at the same time, it was a great scene and really well done by the actors.
I have to re-see the movie too, because I think I did really enjoy his acting by the end, but it was tough because he was so cool with the helmet on and so scary. And then when he took his helmet off, and I also have not seen, what's his name? Adam Driver?
Yeah.
Adam Driver. Mm-hmm. And when he had like that hipster shaggy haircut, I was like, ugh, I don't care for this at all. It was like Darth Vader takes off his helmet and it's like a Mumford & Son underneath. I had trouble with it, but then like now that I know that that's the way it's going, I think he did some really delicate work. It was just tough. I'm just not used to the big bad guys, quote unquote, taking off their helmets like that.
Well, especially because we had to earn it so far. You know, in the first trilogy, we had to earn it.
Yeah.
Like it took a long time to get Darth Vader's head off.
And I've never liked the way that Adam Driver looked, but he's just a really goofy guy. And
yeah.
And I've just when trying to look at him as the bad guy, I also had a hard time. Tommy, you're not alone.
Okay. Good.
As much as I love his character, and I think he does a great job here. Yeah, I mean, I felt like they at least could have done something different with his hair or something. I mean, and maybe it's just because he plays characters that I don't always like what was that movie that he was just in with was it What If? No, While We're Young. That's the one that he was just in with Ben Stiller. Like his character made me so crazy in that movie. And
well, and you were a big fan of Francis Ha, right?
I just despise that film. And Inside Llewyn Davis, I mean, he's briefly in that. I mean, I like him as a character, or as an actor. It's just he has this goofy look, and I don't think I agree. I think they could have made his hair look a little more intimidating or something. But
I got that he was supposed to be like he's the scared kind of pasty kid who's trying to live up to his father or grandfather's legacy, whatever that is. But yeah, that was rough for me. I had trouble getting over that.
I had trouble for just a second. I think everything that we lost in his hair, we made up in his voice and his delivery. I think he was
my complaints are very small. I mean, I think that he really pulled it off. An incredible scene there.
See, to me, I thought it was pretty clear he wasn't going to be the big bad because, and it's earlier on, at some point when they've informed him they've lost the droid or something, and he pulls out his lightsaber and just throws a tantrum. And
love it.
You know, we see like twice. He has these huge like fits and tantrums and cranks out the lightsaber and just is like a little kid throwing a fit. And we've got two stormtroopers that start to come down the hallway. They turn the corner and they just see like debris coming out of the doorway. And they're like, let's go back the other way. And to me, I thought, okay, this is somebody who's not matured in the Force. Or there's something going on, but clearly it's not our big bad because there's that restraint and control that the big bad is going to have. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm curious who this character is. Who is this person that has all this power, but clearly doesn't have the ability to restrain himself yet?
He's a teenager.
Yes, exactly.
He's a teenager of the Force. Yeah,
exactly. But clearly his power is way ramped up. I mean, how cool is that scene? That initial scene out on Jakku where somebody shoots a blaster at him, and he's just like, okay, I'm just going to hold that there for a while, and it's just going to stay there
for the duration of the sequence. That was
although I got to say, I was a little disappointed that he didn't put somebody in front of that and then release it. I kept expecting him to do that. That was like a setup with no payoff. I kept expecting him to do that with Max von Sydow's character or something. I was like, come on, use it. It's sitting there.
You're kind of a dark guy.
Kill him!
There are some other specific characters I want to talk about, but I want to skip to one in particular, Captain Phasma, played by the great Gwendolyn Christie.
She's on Game of Thrones?
Yes.
She's on Game of Thrones, and she's a badass on Game of Thrones. She's fantastic.
It's distracting that they would hire someone that's known for being a badass on another show for such a weird, dumb character.
And make her such a whelp. Am I alone?
She seems like she only exists so they can make the trash compactor joke.
I was really disappointed that she was not the one who confronted him on the planet when they had when he battled with the other stormtrooper and with that super cool
should have been
taser weapon. Why wasn't it her? Exactly.
They put her in a featured stormtrooper role that you just expect her with the shiny tin suit to be somebody to
on the movie poster.
That's because
She
she looks
is.
cool,
It's
though.
bizarre.
I have a feeling, I can only hope that she's going to be back in a bigger way in the upcoming films.
Just a quick comment on the original cast that was in this film, including Anthony Daniels and Peter Mayhew, who, wow, that dude looks every bit Chewbacca as he did, 30 years ago. That was amazing. Like when he's not in,
He doesn't gray at all.
well, you know what I'm saying. Like he just doesn't look like he moves as well. But he looked great in this film. I think he didn't look like an old Chewbacca, is what I'm saying.
And I liked that, Chewbacca got shot. I mean, there were things that happened here that I really enjoyed. And I love that little bit with Chewbacca and the woman fixing him up. That was hilarious.
Oh, that was
Oh,
hilarious.
you're so brave.
That's right. I forgot about that.
That was so great. And Warwick Davis actually pops up in here too, as some character named Wallavan, and I don't even remember who that is, but it's great that he was back in there too.
Oh, I need to say this out loud because I may have I don't want to step in it, but it turns out there is a Junus Suotamo was the Chewbacca double, and maybe that's why Peter Mayhew looks so good as Chewbacca is that he's not.
Because Junus was doing the
much
physicals.
of the film. Because Junus was doing a lot of the
They should have
physical
given
stuff,
Harrison
yeah.
Ford
That's-
a Harrison Ford double for his running.
No.
right.
There is a Han Solo
Oh.
double, just so you know.
I know.
Going back to Finn real quick, I do have to say there was one line in there that I was like, is this like a line that they actually wrote, or is this something that he just threw out on set as improv and they kept it? But he actually says, "Droid, please," at one point. And I was like, that felt
Yeah, that
way
seemed
too
not in the universe of Star Wars.
way too stuck in our dialect. I was like, oh boy, that if anything stuck in my craw, it was that one line. It was the part where he's trying to convince BB-8 to give Rey the location of the rebel base.
Right.
I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. I'll be that guy. And now at least we know why Mark Hamill is not on the poster.
Yeah,
Because he's just still staring at each other on that hillside for 15 minutes.
It's a scene from The Bachelor.
I actually found structurally that
I've actually shot that scene from The Bachelor.
Really?
Seriously.
The rose
on top of the
lightsaber.
Capitol Records building. Yes.
I actually found structurally that this film, as a cliffhanger, was perfect.
because of the literal
Is
cliffhanger.
that too much? Because of the literal cliffhanger. Boom.
I enjoyed that because I was expecting what we typically get, which is, Death Star Killer explodes, everybody comes back on the planet, and then it's like the cast is together and like whoop, credits roll. But we had a classical like little denouement of things moving on. Where does this go next? It wasn't just yay, we killed the planet and imploded it. We got something that went along. I thought, oh, how there's more to tell, and that was interesting way to do that. That was not sort of the traditional way to end a Star Wars film. It gave us a little bit more, which I really enjoyed. It was a nice breather to just sort of get myself back together after all of the action going on, to just get back to the characters, because that tells me that's what this is about. It's not just about, all the big action and explosions. It's really about these characters and relationships. And to me, that really helped drive that point home by having that there, as opposed to starting the next film.
And I have to think that Leia had a little chat with Rey before she hopped in the Millennium Falcon to fly all the way across the galaxy to go see.
Because why didn't Leia
Why did
go?
they send her?
Wasn't she at all interested in seeing her brother again after all these years?
I have to believe that. And call me crazy, but I feel like Rey is clearly Luke's daughter. And
What?
No.
and
No,
I totally think
Rey
she
is.
I think she is.
Hypothetical spoilers.
Exactly. And
Let's do
I
it.
think that Leia had to have some conversation with her before she took off to go fly all the way across the galaxy to go meet this guy. Because it just is so weird that she's like, okay, you, Chewbacca, and R2-D2, you're the only three to go on this trip.
It's a weird group. I agree with
It's
that.
a strange group, yeah.
What were you thinking, JJ?
That it was.
About the twinsies thing. I just think makes too much sense if you think about the family. But I hadn't thought about her being Luke's daughter. That's an interesting idea for a hypothetical spoiler as well.
Instead of brother and sister, it's cousins.
About that the denouement, I like the denouement, but I was joking about that shot. I think I'm going to go back and see it. I'm seeing it on Christmas Eve. I've already bought the tickets for it for like a full family feature. I think that shot's kind of bad. The pull out and the aerial there. Yeah, they could have done it better, which of course that's kind of what I do. So I'm frustrated with it, but I'm going to watch it again and see if it makes sense. It leads me into a conversation that I don't know if this is the right time to have it with us, though, is that this film really felt a lot more like television. And I made the joke about The Bachelor. The shots in general didn't feel cinematic. The camera was really
close,
specific on the action. And I think it took away from the epic nature of this movie. I didn't find this movie epic at all, but I don't have a problem with that. And I think one of the things you said earlier, Pete, in walking out of this movie, it made you appreciate 1, 2, and 3 more in that they were different. What I feel like, if you look at 4, 5, and 6, the magic of 4, 5, and 6 is it's this great fairy tale that marries epic and action, an epic movie with an action movie in a science fiction universe. What they did in 1, 2, 3 is they remembered the epic nature of 4, 5, and 6. And they had these huge, giant shots of the Senate doing the Stamp Act and the planets and these weird things and Jar Jar's world and all this stuff. And they remembered epic, but they forgot action and story. Well, what we found here in 7 is we have the story, but they kind of left the epic behind. We started out with some of the static shots at the beginning of the film with the scavengers in the desert and stuff like that, but as we got into the action, as we walked through the action, we left that behind in this film, and it wasn't a problem. But I feel like if you siphon those 2 parts of 4, 5, and 6, the magic of 4, 5, and 6, if you can't do both, you make a decision. And here they did a great job of making it a story-driven piece that really was filmed in a televisual way. There aren't a whole lot of epic shots that I can remember in the film that weren't computer generated. There were a couple that I was happy with, but for the most part, everything that I saw, including that last wraparound, it's like something I've seen on TV, not like something I've seen in a movie. And it might be the nature of the way they shot it, or it might be just the choices they made in putting those shots in the film. So that was kind of my feeling about it. I'm still happy with the choice, but it's different.
Are you talking about the shots in particular, or just like the feel of like an epic space battle sort of scene?
Yeah, well, a little bit of both of that. I feel like, at the beginning when we're on the sand planet, there was a lot of that. But as we left it, as we went to the action scenes, as we have the contrasting of the space battle and then the Obi-Wan redux on Starkiller going back and forth, if you look at the difference between the way it is shot in The Force Awakens versus the way it's shot in A New Hope, everything seemed wider, bigger, more intense, more open, more epic in A New Hope. Here it was more focused on the focus of the scene. When you see them doing the trench run, for example, you're in it with a tight shot for everything. You don't have that wide shot of the 3 TIE fighters coming and seeing the battle as it happens in an epic way. I just think that was a difference here, and that might be the way that film is going right now, or the way that we want to point towards this thing. I'm happy with the decision. I just think that it's different.
Well, I think I can see your point, although I think some of it was some interesting stuff that I noticed in this that I don't think they were doing back in the days of New Hope, where when you had the shots of the ships flying by, it was models, and you would see these models flying by, and then later they replaced those. But here, I specifically noticed some really interesting shots where it was almost like GoPros attached to the side of the X-Wing as you were flying down into the whatever the comparable trench run is here, whatever that thing is that they were trying to blow up, and you see it coming down as they're dropping their bombs and flying through the explosions from the ship that dropped the bombs ahead of it. All of that, and so I think that they were playing with some of the new
toys,
the new technologies to create some more interesting shots in those scenes. So I kind of disagree with you. I felt it was quite epic, and I really enjoyed the way they shot it. It definitely had a different feel to it, but I still found it just as epic.
I think I agree with JJ and Andy. So great. But I JJ, in the way that when you said that things are changing, that we're getting better at, some filmmakers are, some are still terrible. But to his credit, when really big action scenes were happening, I really knew I felt like I knew where everyone was and where things were relating to each other. Unlike they could ever do in the original 3, 4, 5, and 6, we're calling them. You could see a, what are the bad guys' ships called? TIE fighters?
Yes.
A TIE fighter.
Oh my God.
Shush. You would see a bad guy ship. I'm going to say bad guy ship now, just out of spite. You'd see a bad guy ship get shot down by an X-wing. Suck it. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Shot down by an X-wing by people that we were following, like Poe, in the air, and then you would cut to the land battle and see that same bad guy ship fly into the ground while it goes to a gliding shot of people fighting on the ground. Like, that's the kind of stuff you could never do before. And so that makes it really exciting, and you can really sort of capture what's going on where everything leads to someone else.
And they had already set up that interestingly. I think just talking about the mechanics of the ships, when Poe and Finn are crashing in their TIE fighter, you get to follow it essentially all the way down, right? I mean, you get to see it kind of go down, and then we see that there was apparently mechanics around a parachute, an ejection mechanism, which we'd never seen before. They usually just kind of poof and fire and disappear. Like, there was a lot of debris in this movie that was really new, and that felt expansive to me too, That
was really cool, and I'm sorry, I'm going to take your point and pretend that it was mine. It was so neat to see, like, what happens when people have starfights in the space of, like, that. Yeah, there's tons of litter. There's crash stuff everywhere. And that was the whole, at Jakku or whatever the sand planet was, that's like that whole planet's, or at least that area that we saw, that's the economy is based around that.
Right. And even down to the individual, when Finn is disrobing on the planet, he just drops his stormtrooper stuff on the desert, and that then becomes currency.
I thought that was really neat.
Which I thought that was really neat. I love that.
Well, and even that one ship that crashes as they're doing their chase around, you got those scavengers right there already, like running in to rip it apart. I love that.
Yep. The cinematography was done by Dan Mindel. Have we talked about him ever? I mean, he's done some. He's been with J.J. Abrams for some time. I mean, he did both of the Star Treks, and MI3, but he also did John Carter. I know there are some mixed reviews. Domino, which I liked quite a bit, all the way back to Spy Game with Redford and Brad Pitt, which was terrific, and so he's been around a while, and I think, for me, the thing I was looking for going into this cinematographically was, is it going to look like Star Trek? JJ just did that, and how much lens flare are we going to have? And that's really putting it kind of scandalously, but I feel like that was a great success, that it doesn't look like Star Trek. It felt like Star Wars, but for me, introduced me to pieces of Star Wars that I had never been so intimately introduced to, and so I felt like that was a great success.
And Pete, to your point, I think I also was looking for the lens flares, and I realized this was more J.J. Abrams, being respectful of Star Wars, because it's not a reboot where he's creating something new. He's continuing on, and we can discuss, we've discussed whether it's a bit of a reboot, but to me it was that balance of, I have to be tied to this pre-existing piece, but I can still make it my own. I can still do a little bit with it and do some things. And I think part of it is the scope and scale of things, that the Rebels are not a huge force of, hundreds of thousands. And even the First Order, I don't have a strong sense that they're, this army of millions. We did have one shot of, they're coming together to celebrate, outside. We do see that there are quite a few of the stormtroopers lined up, but I did appreciate it didn't get to the scale of, as Tommy will often talk about, let's just put cameras in places because we can, and let's have all this stuff going on where it's fake things blowing up fake things, and it's just overwhelming. That to me,
wasn't
that's not
overly fussy,
right? And to me, that's not epic. That's just visual noise where I can't keep track of stuff. And this, to me, it kept it grounded and rooted really well to do that. So in terms of, is it epic or not, I think it has a slightly different feel than, because I've just watched 4, 5, and 6. Yes, cinematically it has a different feel to it, but I enjoy it. They're doing some things that I found interesting. To me, most notably, the thing that I did not expect was when Ren goes to touch Luke's lightsaber, and we have like flashback dream thing. What like what is going on? We have not had anything where what we're seeing is within someone's head. We've always been camera as outside observer of these things. This is the first time we transitioned into someone's thoughts.
And I
Like
thought
that.
that was done well.
What about Empire Strikes Back, where he goes into the cave?
Possibly, but again, it could be taken both ways. To me, this is very clear that these were flashes of things that were being communicated to her mentally or within her mind, or memories, because it seems like there were also some of her memories there. So we were getting lots of different things. And to me, I enjoyed that. It was completely unexpected. It worked well. It was a way of communicating, I think, some interesting information. To see Luke with R2D2, we had, it filled in a little bit of the gaps, but not so much that we knew everything, but to just tease at pieces of things that we may be seeing play out.
We saw Luke with R2D. Oh, Metal Hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the cloaked figure. Oh, neat. I didn't even
Yes.
catch
Old
that.
Metal
I really
Hand,
loved
yeah.
that sequence, Steve. So thank you for bringing that up.
My favorite shot of the film was as the camera's tracking away and Finn and Rey are running away from, this is early in the film, as they're running away from the encampment, and things are exploding and they're yelling at each other and BB-8 is rolling behind them and the camera's tracking away. That was really cool. I don't think I've seen anything too much like that before.
We were talking about J.J. Abrams and visual tics like the lens flare. I felt like, and you guys can remind me because I haven't seen the 4, 5, or 6 in a long time. I felt like his only visual tic this time was having every act-in shot that took place aboard a bad guy ship had 4 stormtroopers awkwardly trotting towards nowhere in particular. Like there was like 1,900 shots of that. Is that constant in the 4, 5, and 6?
They're on patrol.
They're just on patrol. Okay, fair enough.
A lot of patrol on their own star base. They would just wander around patrolling it.
Yeah, where are they going?
When you have a planet, an actual planet that is a weapon, they have a lot of getting from one place to the other.
Good point.
That's a good point, Andy. Like, what is your take on the Starkiller base versus the Death Star?
They're all so silly. I don't really, it doesn't bother me at all. It's kind of a joke at least for me in some circles, how people in the Star Wars universe, they always end up in the exact right spot to do the things that they need to do. When they're landing on these things that are the size of a moon, or now in this case, the size of a freaking planet, they always are right where they need to be, and the people that they need to get to all conveniently are within walking distance. And
They're super smart people. They're super smart.
So funny. It just is the way that, it's part of the universe. I accept that as part of the universe. I really don't have a problem, but I find it so funny.
The Deus Ex Machina of R2 waking up right at the right time to show everyone that.
Exactly.
I thought he was just buffering.
That was a little bit much for me too. Like they couldn't just give him the other plans. Like they had to have both robots kind of intersect their graphics in the sky. Like that was a little. If there was a thing that was too much for me, I think that would have been it. So that's saying pretty
well, and
that's
especially in episode, was it 2 where Obi-Wan has to track down the whatever planet where they're making all the clones, and Yoda and he are looking in that room with all the stuff, and Yoda's like, oh, there's a planet that's not there or whatever. And they have that freaking map. It's a huge map. Clearly, they've mapped the entire galaxy back then. Why is there all of a sudden this one little section of the galaxy that C-3PO looks at and is like, oh, but it's not a section of the galaxy I've ever seen before? It's like, you guys have already tracked the entire galaxy. I didn't understand why that one section all of a sudden, but that one's not.
Except that. Yeah.
And by the way, this is my little 1-second thing. Was it just me, or was C-3PO's voice pitched up slightly higher than it has been in the previous films? I swear his voice was high.
I did not notice.
He's going through robot puberty.
And their voice goes up in puberty.
John Williams.
My two of the specific cry scenes that I had in the film were the first when you revisit the theme as you see the Millennium Falcon. That was awesome. That was the first part that I giggled and cried and everything. That was great. And then the subtle variation on the theme as she reaches the lightsaber to Luke at the end, just awesome. And we look back at the original Star Wars movies and a lot of the stuff that John Williams has done, and it just reminds you of really great themes and how they can be used right. I loved when those came back, and it was the familiarity of those things that really made it powerful for me in this movie. As
much as I loved his music, because it was a brilliant score, but I was disappointed, I will say, that I didn't walk away humming any new themes.
Sure, that makes sense.
That was the big the point for me that I was a little bummed at. I feel like they were there. I just don't feel like they stood out to me because I was probably paying attention so much to the old themes that I love so much. So I'm actually wanting to go see it again and really kind of pinpoint some of those themes for the new characters.
You should, because they're really good, and we actually have had it just kind of running in the background of the house today, on kind of repeat the soundtrack or the score, and it's really lovely. And that's one thing I wanted to say, that in the past, I think John Williams, when he is reviving his own scores, sometimes is operating, I think, at a bit of a deficit when it comes to originality of new themes that come out of it. And I think this one, it really showcases that the man has still got it. Like, he's really very, very good. And the score has just enough of an homage to the original and a whole boatload of new original stuff that I think works really well, not only in the film, but just as listenable symphonic music. It's beautiful.
I hope he's around for episodes 8 and 9. If he's not, I feel like at least they've kind of spiritually accepted that Michael Giacchino would be the follow-up. And, of course, Michael Giacchino was a Stormtrooper in this one.
That's right. Lots of cameos.
Daniel Craig was a Stormtrooper.
Do you know which Stormtrooper he was?
No.
Rumored to be the one that she mind controls to set her free.
Oh, that's fun.
Was that actually his voice?
No. If it is, he's doing a good American voice.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I really like that scene. And drop your weapon.
Yes.
And drop my weapon.
which gets to my little one thing, which is the strong female characters in this film. There was a video, a cut going out probably earlier this month. Somebody had gone through the original trilogy and cut together all the dialogue from female characters that aren't Leia. And that whole video, even with its little title shot and all that, is only 1 minute and 32 seconds long.
Oh, no.
So,
I will say the thing that bothers me about these videos, and I'm just saying this as a point because these videos really piss me off. Don't get me wrong. I understand the point they're trying to make,
right.
But if you do the same thing with the male voices in a film, you're going to end up, it's not going to be freaking 2 hours long. It's going to be,
no. But
10
it's
minutes or 30 minutes or whatever,
But what you'll see is, I think Empire Strikes Back, there's like one line of dialogue that's not Leia from a female character. It's like there's something, there's Aunt Beru in A New Hope, and like Empire, there's like nothing, and then you've got a couple things in Jedi. But for here to really have not just female characters, but really strong characters, you've got Rey, you've got Captain Phasma, you've got Maz Kanata, who was played by
Lupita Nyong'o.
So, and these female characters that are strong and leaders, and people are looking to them, or they're in control of something, that they have responsibilities. They're not just there to be saved or to just fill a plot point. They're, well-rounded characters. And to me, that was something that I, as a, having two daughters, something that I appreciate, knowing that they can come to this movie and be connecting and seeing themselves represented in one way or another in this film. Not just, I'm going to go see another action movie that's all guys and boys doing boy and guy things. So to me, again, seeing this moving forward in this direction and storytelling and having a variety of roles for strong women was something I was really excited about.
I could not agree more, Steve. That was one of those things. Actually seeing it with my daughter and my wife today was just watching how well they connected to it. I thought was really, it was just really special. I didn't expect it. I certainly didn't expect it, as much of a nerd as I have been about these films over the last 30 years. Domhnall Gleeson is evil.
He's a great job as the Nazi leader in First Order.
That's an interesting thing, right? His scene to the First Order, when the First Order gathers on the snowy planet as they're about to start sucking in the energy of the sun, was beautifully like
Letty
propaganda.
Right, beautifully propagandist, and I thought he did a great job with it.
Before we were to rank this, where would everybody put it in their a group of the Star Wars movies?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that.
I haven't settled on that yet.
It's number
first, but I'm a weirdo.
You'd say first, the best one for you. Cool.
Yeah. No, I would say Empire, then this.
That's probably where I am. That's where I've been as I've been floating around for the last day. But I need to see it again. I know, right. Andy, you've seen it twice, right?
I've seen it twice now. Right now, it's falling third. It would be Empire, Star Wars, this, and then Jedi. I'm not convinced yet. I still have to watch them again. Jedi may end up popping up, but I really do like this one quite a bit.
It's number 4 for me.
Number 4,
because I like 4, 5, and 6. I think all go in front of it for me.
Oh.
But
that's kind of the battle I'm having.
But that's the magic. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know if those movies are really that much better, or if I'm just remembering,
Right, that's the
my
nostalgia
feeling
piece.
there. I think it's fair to say that I'm not fully, objective about it, but this is great, and it's better than any of the first three. But I love 4, 5, and 6 so much.
There's an interesting comment from Jason Kotke on his blog and his points about the final film, and I think he made an interesting connection that I hadn't thought of. He says, when Lucas made the first trilogy and when he and Spielberg made Raiders of the Lost Ark, he constructed it from a bunch of different sources, from when he was a kid and in film school. With The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams did the same thing, but instead of pulling from Flash Gordon and Kurosawa like Lucas did, he pulled from what he grew up with as a kid and in film school, Star Wars and Spielberg. In a way, The Force Awakens is a reboot of the original 1977 Star Wars, similar plot and all. Even if it isn't a true reboot, it sure does rhyme. That connection that he makes between what Lucas and Spielberg were working off of as their inspiration, and what Abrams was working off of as his inspiration, really holds true for me. And I felt like I could feel it, just as I have been able to feel it in his other films. When you look at Mission Impossible, when you look at Star Trek, when you look at even films that he didn't directly direct but produced, Cloverfield, the Abercrombie and Fitch monster movie. So I thought that was a really interesting connection, and that's one that makes me have almost an even greater affinity for this film, because it so deeply reminds me of the sources that I'm working with when I'm thinking about kind of films that make an impact on me too. They're the films I grew up with, and this one feels right at home, hand to glove.
I love that.
It is, I think, in terms of numbers, wow.
Spanking it.
Is it doing okay?
What's the latest? Andy, did you look this one up at all?
Last that I saw was, it blew away opening day, the record from opening day, which I think was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. That was, at the time, that was the best single day opening at, I think, 91 million. This one, opening day, was 120.5 million. So opening day, it just knocked the socks off of the box office, and it is it's doing really, really well. Interestingly, internationally, though, it's actually falling behind Jurassic World. So
Really?
I'm curious to see. Jurassic World just did better. I'm trying to find the specifics. I don't see them here, but yeah, Jurassic World did more on its opening day internationally. So
That might be because I flew overseas to see it a bunch.
I hate to pick on it, but it's one of these things that I wish we could just get down to like total number of tickets, because not that this doesn't deserve all this, but how many more IMAX and 3D screenings are there of this?
Yeah.
Then there was, Deathly Hallows, you've got inflation and all of that, where I was just like, just report how number of tickets sold, because everybody knows it's a ridiculous amount. But to give us a really fair comparison, because you can have, what's going to happen in a few more years when episode 8 comes out. It's going to be the number one, and it's going to, because ticket prices will creep up by 5 or 10%. And
when number 9 comes out, films will be in pill form.
Exactly.
Amen.
Exactly.
I can't wait.
But definitely,
though you can't say, Steve, like there is undoubtedly a freneticism around this film that we did not see for Jurassic World.
Oh,
yes.
there's
right.
no doubt.
I mean, we certainly have not seen the same kind of turnout for for anything since. And thank God for counter programming. God loves Sisters. And Road Chimp.
And Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah.
Not the Squeakle, though.
Road Trip. Chimp.
Road Chip.
That's right.
But this is certainly, I mean, to have blown away all those records in pre-sale tickets is something that's new.
Well, yeah,
So-
Jurassic
that
World's
is.
pre-sale. Well, I don't know if they're pre-sale tickets, but their Thursday night preview screenings was 18,500,000. Star Wars was 57 million.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's go ahead, I think, then, gentlemen, and we should rank it.
Once again, it's time to rank the film. Follow us over to Flick Chart. Set the alarm clock on your blaster, because we got to wake up the Force. Finn and Ray and Poe and BB-8 all will judge upon Flick Chart. Let's go find out where it stands, and may the Flick Chart be with you always. song goes.
Oh,
That's good.
that's pretty close.
Kind of
I like
close.
It was the last little stanza, I think. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
There was one, because I'm such a Child 44 lover, there was one line that I tried to get in and I couldn't make it, which is a train can't undress a droid. But I couldn't figure out how to get that in. All right.
Okay, head over to flickchart.com/TNR Film Board, and you can see all the films that we've done. What are we up to now? Like 40?
This will
This
be
is gonna be
41.
41
Nice.
films that we have ranked on this show as a gang of thugs. So start there, pick these 40 movies, see how they stack up, and see how they rank against us. Andy?
First up, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, or The Bourne Legacy.
Star Wars,
Star
Force
Wars.
Awakens.
Star Wars.
Is it just me? This is a total aside, but why have they taken off Episode 7 off of everything for this?
I don't know.
Now it's everywhere I see. It's just Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Like the Episode 7 portion of the title is gone.
Well,
Cleaning the
because
slate.
you don't say Star Wars Episode 5: The Empire Strikes Back, do you?
No, but it's written that way everywhere.
It's
Well,
a
that's
That's
restart.
what I'm
It's
saying.
not
It's
a
not
sequel.
written that way anywhere.
It's a restart.
On the
Not a
letterboard at the theater, it was IX star 7.
Someone
So-
was late to work.
Yeah.
All right, Star Wars or Spectre?
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Wait, Spectre. Oh, I didn't see Spectre. Star Wars.
Star Wars or The Martian?
The Martian.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star
I said The
Wars.
Martian. I'm alone.
You're alone on Mars.
You're alone on a little red planet, Tommy.
I
That's
am,
okay.
but my dog's with me.
Yay.
Star Wars or Kingsman? The Secret Service.
Kingsman.
Kingsman.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Ooh.
Star Wars.
Oh.
Oh. JJ, you're on my planet.
Oh, definitely.
Now this is skipping right over Edge of Tomorrow. Star Wars or Gravity? This is
Star Wars.
Ooh. This goes right to the
Right.
comment we had earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we were talking about this earlier. So on my flick chart, which you can get from thenextreel.com, you can go to mine of all the movies in the next reel that we've seen, not just the film boards, but the ones that I have above Gravity are Kingsman and Edge of Tomorrow and Gravity. So yeah, that's interesting that
There
it
you
showed
go.
up this way.
I'm going to say Gravity.
Ooh, I don't know what to say.
I love Gravity to pieces. I think it's brilliant. Star Wars is a part of a series that I grew up with and I love, and I think they did so much right with this film. Any problems that I have, I am going to very easily find myself dismissing as I continue watching this throughout my life. It has to be Star Wars for me.
And me.
I'm going to say Gravity.
Oh my.
It's on you, Steve.
It is.
Again.
So they're both very powerful, emotional movies for me. I mean, Gravity was just a tremendously amazing experience, but I also was there with Pete during the opening crawl and tears, and just this was a so overwhelming of an experience for me, and fun. And the fact is, Andy, you point out they did so many things right with this. I mean, there were several times I just wanted to applaud this film for getting it right, for everything, and that I'm going to pick this over Gravity. This is one of my favorite films of the year. I love this so
Steve.
much.
Absolutely.
This is
So
not
there
the
you
flick
go.
chart you're looking for.
So what's the name of our letterbox guy that wrote in? Is it
Rakesh. There
Rakesh?
you go, Rakesh.
Totally appropriate timing for his comment.
Thank you
It
so
really
much.
was. It really was. So there it is, our new flick chart number 1 for the TNR Film Board.
Star
The
Wars?
Force Awakens. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Huzzah!
Fanboys.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll see 19
Now,
Marvel movies and we'll
Rakesh,
disappear.
you'll have to write in 2 years, Rakesh, and see if we still feel the same way.
That's right. That's right. Set an alert. This was a great conversation. Now, the bigger question, how many stars do you give the Star Wars in place number 1?
4.
Out of what? I'm sorry?
Out of 5 stars.
Out of 7 stars for you, Tommy.
3.
I'm a 5-star review. If it's up there on my top films, it's a 5-star totally.
Yeah, it's 5 for me, too.
Yeah. 5 for me. So Tommy, you said 3,
Yes, sir.
and JJ, you said 4.
Correct.
So we'll see just how well the voice of reason stands up for the three of us over the course of the next year. This is a great conversation. Where do we go from here? This is our next meeting will be in the new year. Am I right?
Yeah, 2016. Right at the end of January, we're going to be talking about the new Craig Gillespie film with Chris Pine, The Finest Hours.
True story about the Coast Guard, right?
Yeah, some crazily
That's
ridiculous.
It's the most something.
It's the most something. It's a rescue by the Coast Guard off the coast of New England, and it was they had to rescue, I can't remember how many people off of 2 sinking ships, and so it's based on that true story. Harrowing adventure.
Makes a daring rescue attempt off the coast of Cape Cod after a pair of oil tankers are destroyed during the blizzard of 1952.
Oh, I didn't know we had the trailer. That's perfect.
That's what they sound like. That's what they sound like. There's a storm coming.
Get your animals in the
pond. They tell you you gotta go out. They don't tell you gotta come back in. Coast Guard is great. They're so cuddly.
All right.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one. I look forward to that. That's January. That's in the new year, gentlemen. So that means this is a big Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Did anybody do a gift exchange? No. Silence.
With each other?
That's on you, Tommy.
Pony prize.
No one got my ponies? I literally sent you all ponies.
I'm going to say something right now because this is a teaser. I'm going to say something right now. We have a new T-shirt coming for 2015, and I'm telling you, it is the best. The best. It is once again a work from the multi-talented Joel Micah Harris, same guy who did last year, and it's fantastic. Andy, please.
I cannot wait to put it on my body.
Wow.
It is so good. I can't wait to share it with everybody. Please be ready, be listening, because it's going to be coming out any day now, and we're very excited to share. So in terms of our top films of 2015, this is the one to watch. That's all I have. Thanks, everybody. Steve Sarmento, thanks for being here.
It's great to complete this podcast in under 14 parsecs.
12.
That's right, 12.
Tommy Handsome.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Happy New Year.
And JJ.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you, sir. Andy Nelson.
We'll talk soon, man.
Talk to you on Thursday.
Yeah, I think that is the Cantina theme, isn't it?
It is.
It's the Cantina theme. It was.
The end.
It wasn't until you got to the end.
Missed the end part. That's all.
Oh, the end part because I never wrote the end because I don't know.
Go.
The end I usually make up because I run out of time. That's why it always ends with me just screaming some word.